The evidence is all around us, in the newspapers, on the streets, in our schools, and even in our own neighborhoods. Is it time for Las Cruces to sit up and take notice and read the writing on the wall? I'm Gary Worth.
And I'm Rachel Schneider. Thank you for being with us tonight for this NewsView 22 special report on gangs in Las Cruces.
When shit happens, we unite. That's just the way we take it. You know, we've always took it like that.
You know, I have people coming up to me every other day asking me, well, don't you regret it? And, yeah, I regret it, but I'm not ashamed of it.
Gang activity is on the rise in Las Cruces. New groups are moving in, older groups are gaining strength. Young people in schools are facing increased pressure from gangs, and we all feel the impact in another way through the rising crime rate. In this program, we ask a key question: is the writing on the wall?
During the next hour, we'll look into just how serious the problem is here in Las Cruces. We'll talk with police and school officials to keep you up to date. And later we'll meet some local gang members themselves and get a glimpse of their world. And finally, we'll talk with some people who are trying to deal with this growing problem.
Well, we like to think of Las Cruces as a small, friendly, and above all, safe community, free of big city problems and especially free of gangs. Sadly, that is not the case. Gangs are now making their mark on this community and in other cities in this region. What's happening out there? Let's take a look. It's a small town that's experiencing some growing pains.
Hey, Mom.
We have to realize we are going to start having some big city crime, and some of that big city crime is gang activity.
Pete Hampton has only been chief of police in Las Cruces for a few months, but he's lived here a lot longer, and he's watched with concern as the gang problem has grown in intensity. It really wasn't a problem a decade ago. In the 1950s and 60s, there were people in Las Cruces who formed groups, but Hampton says they were not involved in organized crime. It's a much different and more serious situation today. Police believe there are at least 17 gangs in Las Cruces. They claim as many as 650 members, and they are much more than social groups.
We haven't had too many incidents where people have been shot with firearms. We have had incidents where people have been accosted and assaulted with clubs and with fists, with knives occasionally. We have had a few drive-by shootings. But again,
in fact, the number of drive-by shootings has increased dramatically. In the past 6 months, police have noted as many as 50 incidents. But so far, there have been no gang-related deaths.
I feel something's coming along. I don't know what it is, but somebody's going to get hurt, you know. I mean, pretty bad. I mean, real bad.
But nobody wants to wait around for more serious violence to occur. That's why the police formed a small task force a few years ago to begin identifying gangs and the territories that they claim in the city. And it's why authorities and school officials like Rosalie Gallegos are working with gang members and with school kids who might end up in gangs.
Yeah, we have a problem, and I don't see it getting any better unless we get involved with the students and teach them how to say no to it. They can't say no once they're in. And so what we're trying to do is try and get them to stop the violence rather than getting them completely out of the gangs.
I think we are prime. We've got a high unemployment rate here. The average income is low here. There is a large problem here of dysfunctional families, of single parents, raising 5, 6 kids, this type of thing. So yeah, we are prime for that. We need to find some place for these kids to go.
It's a similar, though less serious situation in another small community northwest of Las Cruces. In Silver City, the graffiti tells the story. It's believed gang members are partly to blame, and it's got merchants worried.
there needs to be more parental supervision, and that they need to know where their students are, where their children are. Because we understand from the police department that a lot of these children that are doing the vandalism are young, from 10 up to about 14. And those children need to be home in the middle of the night instead of downtown Silver City, breaking windows and writing graffiti on the walls.
Business owners are requesting more foot patrols to stop the vandalism. Over the summer, an increased police presence seemed to pay off. Now, Silver City merchants are circulating a petition to bring back the patrols. They have already collected more than 200 signatures. Meanwhile, in Las Cruces, authorities are prepared to crack down on gang members who get involved in criminal activities. They are also trying to get a message across to the public, and that is, act now, before the gang problem gets out of hand.
If the gangs continue as they are, and if the gangs do revert to criminal activity more than what they are now, and if the market is there for, let's say, drugs, stolen property, burglaries, auto theft, and things of that nature, yes, I do have that fear. Some of those gangs may revert to that type of organized criminal activity, structured organized criminal activity.
And that's what we're afraid of right now, is that these real hardcore members from Los Angeles, from Colorado, from other states have heard of Las Cruces, and they have heard of Las Cruces, and they have heard of a lot of kids getting together, and they do want to come here, and they have been here trying to organize our kids. And it's not just going to be a neighborhood problem, because it is involving drugs, and they are making money with drugs, and they are teaching kids how to do that and how to make money. And these kids are going to be making, if we don't make changes, I see these kids making a lot of money. And that's going to help them organize and stay together. Because we've seen that. That's just the patterns in other towns and other cities.
Local officials don't want to see Las Cruces follow the usual pattern, and they say it doesn't have to, if the community is willing to work together to find solutions.
The gang problem, of course, is not going unnoticed in this community. In many ways, we are very fortunate to have a head start in dealing with the problem. We are not yet a Los Angeles, and local officials say that's very good because it gives us the opportunity to avoid some of the problems that bigger cities are experiencing. Well, joining us now are some local officials who are in the forefront in the battle against gangs in Las Cruces. And I'd like to introduce you to Detective Chuck Franco. He is, of course, with the Las Cruces Police Department and currently assigned to the city's gang suppression unit. Next, Jesse Gonzalez, the superintendent of the Las Cruces Public Schools. In our community, schools and gangs seem to go hand in hand, so we expect to get a lot of information out of him tonight. Finally, Victor Rivera. He's an actor from Los Angeles. You may have seen him in movies like The Class of 1999 and Salsa. More important, though, in the context of this program, he's a former member of one of the biggest gangs in Los Angeles, known as the Big Bassett Night Owls, and we're going to find out a whole lot more from him later on. But first, Detective Franco, I'd like to start with you. You're the authority, really, when it comes to gangs in Las Cruces. Do we have a problem, or are we really getting ahead of ourselves here?
Well, unfortunately, Gary, yes, we do have a problem here in Las Cruces. We have seen an increase in the gang activity over the past several months, and it was at that time that our chief allowed us to investigate it a little further, and in doing so, we're able to produce enough reports which did indicate we were having quite an extensive gang problem here in Las Cruces.
And I think that may come as a surprise to a lot of people, because I know myself and people that I've talked to, they think Las Cruces is a peaceful little community that doesn't have a gang problem. How wrong are we?
Well, let's put it this way. Initially, even our own administration did not acknowledge the fact that we had a gang problem. That should tell you quite a bit there. Once we were able to show them that, yes, we did have a gang problem based on the amount of drive-by shootings we were having in Las Cruces and the different types of criminal activity which indicated gang affiliation, yes, we were able to show them we do have a gang problem.
Well, let's get a little specific. How many gangs, and is it a big increase? from years past?
To date, Gary, we have been able to document 18 different gangs here in Las Cruces, with a total gang affiliation of anywhere between 450 and 600 members. Of that number, we are talking the age group of anywhere from 10 years old to 45 years old. And 70% of those individuals were under the age of 18. So that's basically what we're looking at.
And are these gangs locally organized, or are they organized from outside?
Of the 18 gangs, we have 4 that have been linked to the Bloods, the Crips, and 2 gangs that are linked to gangs out of Mexico. And the rest are local gangs.
When you say Bloods and Crips, that connotes some pretty tough gangs from
Yes,
the West Coast?
Yes. Well, these particular Bloods and Crips we're talking about are the Bloods out of Albuquerque and the Crips out of Phoenix, who have sent gang members to Las Cruces, basically, Gary, to recruit and to basically scope out what type of problem we have here and, if anything, what the police are doing about it.
And you mentioned some gangs being organized out of Mexico.
Yes.
What kind of gang activity does that involve?
Basically, pretty serious type crimes. Anywhere ranging from attempted murder so far all the way down to shoplifting. And it's these type crimes that are used to finance gangs and to actually have initiations for gang members. In some gangs, you cannot belong to the gang until you commit a certain type of crime. This is unfortunate for us.
What kinds of crimes are we talking about?
We have some that you cannot become a member until you rape, some involved in stabbings, some in auto theft, some in shoplifting. It just varies depending on the gang.
So you see the trend then from even just a few years ago as being one from not so much violence, not so much criminal activity. That's changed rather rapidly.
Yes, sir, it sure has.
Within, what, even a few months?
Within, I would say, to be on the safe side, within the last year, we've seen a steady increase in gang activity here in Las Cruces.
So it is time that we perhaps
take a look
at it.
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez, 1 or 2 weeks into the school year, this term, there was word out that there was a gang problem at Mayfield High School. Believe it involved a fight. Perhaps you could fill us in on that. Is that an indication of what's happening, the type of thing you have to deal with in the school system?
Yes, it is, Gary. It was in the first week of school, I think the 4th day of the school year. And there were about 25, 30 kids involved in an incident, and it was a gang fight in the sense there were about 20 guys on one side and maybe 8 or 9 on the other. And there was a weapon. The weapon was a pipe that had been edged down to a very sharp edge. And 2 kids were hurt. Not seriously, thank God, but still hurt. That's just, I guess, one of the symptoms we've been preaching all along, that we do have gangs in our schools, and they're spreading. Last year, when I first came to Las Cruces, I noticed the graffiti and the placas and the crossing out, and I did inform the board that I thought we had gangs. We were fortunate that the city chief of police then at the time and the city manager met with us, and they said they would help us. And since then, of course, they appointed Detective Franco. I think it was a good move in helping us, single out kids, identify kids. One of the main sources of gangs, of course, is the visual intimidation that they have, and they all like to wear the same clothing, the black shirts in this particular case. When I went to that fight at Mayfield that day, the first thing I noticed was all of the black shirts. One corner staring down another group of kids that also had black shirts.
Well, I'd like to react to something you said. You said you came here a year ago and said there's a gang problem in the schools. We didn't know it before?
I don't know if we knew it or not. I don't think that the principals and the officials at the schools were taking it serious. But anytime you have the placas, the kids, I guess the newspaper or the barrio, the placas, the kids' signatures, and it's crossed out by someone else, that spells trouble. This young man here sitting next to me can tell us about that. He's experienced all of those things. But I did inform the school board, and I did inform the principals, and we had in-service. We brought in a lot of people, brought in some of the gang unit from Albuquerque, the first meeting we ever had, to tell us about what they saw. And they came into the community, spent a day, and identified a lot of the things that Detective Franco is talking about. what we were trying to do is get the awareness level to identify, make sure that we know that there's a problem, that we're not sweeping it under the carpet, that we're dealing with a problem. We want to deal with a problem as soon as we can, as early as we can. You know, we need to intervene and we need to prevent. And kids start in gangs very young. I was at one of the middle schools the other day talking to kids, and it's interesting that why kids join gangs, and there's no failure in gangs. Kids don't fail in the gangs, you know. Whatever they do, the violence, the things that they do, it's all a success. Regardless of how violent it is, it's good for the kids. And so we want to make sure that that principals understand that. We have to have alternatives for kids so that the gang is not the thing that draws them.
Well, I would like to move over to Victor Rivera because you have an interesting point of view. You came from Los Angeles. You were heavily involved with gang activity out there. You moved to Las Cruces within the last year, and you had a chance to take a look at our community from the outside. We've heard that both of these two gentlemen saw the gang problem. What did you see?
I noticed it right away. As soon as I got out here, like Mr. Gonzalez was saying, as soon as you saw the writing on the wall and then one crossing out another, you know that spells trouble immediately. That's insulting another gang, you know what I mean? So that right away, I noticed that there was a gang problem out here. At first, the people were telling me, well, you know, there's no gang problem out here. I'm telling them, I definitely see it. There's something out here that's
wrong. I've had people tell me, no, our gangs are, I don't know, we call them minor gangs or something, that they're not into the same types of activities that gangs are into in other communities. What have you seen, though?
Well, what I've seen when I was younger, the gangs is real violent, you know. I mean, there was bad things, people getting killed and everything. I see that this place, Las Cruces, has potential of becoming like the way Los Angeles has if somebody doesn't do something about it right away. And from what I've seen working with Detective Franco, we've been working on it, and I've been talking with a lot of kids, and a lot of kids don't realize what gangs are really all about. So I think we got to get somebody or something out there to let these kids know that what gangs are really all about, because they think being in a gang is cool, and that's the only thing. They see either their older brothers or their older friends, and being in it is cool. There's nothing wrong with it. But they don't realize that death can occur from this or major injuries. Mr. Gonzalez was my principal in Los Angeles of my high school, and he knows exactly what I've been through, and he knows the friends of mine that got killed that were in the gangs out there.
Well, let's talk about the level of violence, the level of crime in Las Cruces. You've mentioned that you've confiscated now some weapons from gang members, and we have some of those weapons here. Can you show us the type of weapons the gang members are using?
Yes, Gary, just to show you the seriousness of what we're talking about here in Las Cruces. This weapon here, it's a .22 semi-automatic, was taken off a 12-year-old just 2 weeks ago. This is here in Las Cruces. I came about it when I went to talk to him about graffiti. This was in his pants, okay? This is what worries us. This is the type of problem we're looking at. This other weapon, it's also a .22, was taken from a 17-year-old. He was heavily involved in gang activity. He is now no longer in the state. This weapon here is also used in gang activity here in Las Cruces. This is getting way beyond what we would like to have in our city, and this is why we need to get on it now.
So we see some of these youngsters cruising up and down the street. They may be carrying this type of weapon. What are the police doing to crack down on this?
Well, what we are doing is we're concentrating on congregations, specifically over the weekends. We know where they congregate. We know what type of activity they're interested in. We know sometime ahead of time, we know what they're up to, and we try to head that off before it becomes a major problem. We are learning who the leaders are, and we are targeting those individuals to make sure that we can get to the root of the problem before it even becomes a problem. And this has helped a great deal here in Las Cruces.
And you're putting some behind bars?
Yes, definitely. To date, we have made 27 arrests over the past 4 months, and 23 of those are doing time right now.
Briefly, Mr. Gonzalez, Are we going to get a handle on this thing in the schools in the city?
We are, especially with the help again from the police. We're just doing a lot of intervening at the schools. We've increased counseling staffs, and we're telling kids at a very young age, you know, gangs, say no to gangs. It's just like we say no to drugs, say no to gangs. But we have programs, alternative programs for kids, hopefully that will take the place of a gang.
And later on, we're going to talk about some of those programs. I'd like to thank all three of you, Detective Franco, Mr. Gonzalez of the school district, and Victor Rivera, for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The gang issue is a complex one. The authorities have shown us one aspect of the issue, but there's more to the story.
Then there are the local gang members themselves. We hear about them, we read about them, but do we really know what we're dealing with in a gang member? When we come back, we'll talk with some local gang members and find out what it's like on their side of the wall.
If your son or daughter has a drinking problem, you may have tried it all. And when you think there's nothing else you can do, there is. We're the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. Get through to us and we'll help you get through to them. Just don't give up.
There's even cops that'll plant something on you like a weapon as they're frisking you, just to get you off the streets.
Now these days, I mean, my little brother tells me at school, yeah, teachers, you know, they're all scared of everybody now, you know, because what they hear about gangs and stuff.
A lot of times it's hard to get members of different gangs together, but with the help of former gang member Victor Rivera, whom you met earlier tonight, we were able to get two gangs to call a timeout, and a member from each gang agreed to talk with us in our studio. I spoke with them about life inside a gang. Can you tell me about the types of people that are in your gang, the age groups?
The youngest one I'd say is 12, 13. The oldest one ranges anywhere from 40 to early 50s.
Okay, and the older ones, are they the ones that started this from the very beginning, and they just keep recruiting the younger?
It's not really them that recruits. They just hang back and wait for something to happen, like if we ever need help. It's the younger ones, or the say, 20-year-olds, so to speak, that are doing the recruiting.
Okay. How do you go about recruiting new members for your gang?
Well, the way it is that I guess if you have a good reputation, you know, that you're bad and you do a lot of crazy stuff, well, the little kids want to be in. So if they want to be in, they have to, you know, do something, get beat up or do something stupid. So that's the way I'd say.
Okay, do you ever feel bad if you're taking someone that's 12 years old, a child, and you're bringing them into this environment? How does that make you feel, knowing that?
Yeah, it makes me feel kind of bad, you know, because they're young, you know, and once they get in gangs, they're going to start going to jail, you know. They're going to start getting guns, getting drugs, all that kind of stuff, partying, drinking a lot, and that's not good for you. They're not going to want to study in their books. Like me, I was in gangs, got into gangs, and instead I'd rather be out in the streets with my friends than in school studying in my books, you know, taking books home. I never want to carry books home, stuff like that, you know, so, and I don't think they should be going home all beat up, because it don't feel good to go have bruises and stuff all on your face, going home all beat up, having to put ice on you every night and stuff. It doesn't feel good.
So do you ever think, Carlos, about your future and how this is going to affect what it is that you do?
Oh yeah, all the time. You know, it's like I'm branded for life. I've got a bad reputation. I started to realize that it's not my reputation that's going to get me through life. It's more my setting, like, you know, what I'm going to do with my life. You know, it used to be where I could, you know, care less about, you know, how I acted in front of people, but, you know, it's starting to set in, but it doesn't really make a difference what people think about you.
So what is going through a young person's mind when they're carrying a gun? they're doing drugs, they're fighting. Is that something that is this person that they want to be? They think it's glamorous, exciting?
I guess they think it's exciting. I know when you have a gun, you get happy. You want to shoot it. You get trigger happy. I know that's the way I was when I had a gun. So I guess to them it's fun, you know, funny. They don't care. If they hurt somebody, well, they don't think about it till after they hurt them.
Is it worth it?
No, it's not. It's not really.
Okay, you've been in trouble with the law before.
Yes, lots of times. I have a bad reputation, you know. Cops think that I'm not going to straighten up, you know. They think I'm going to be this bad person all my life. That's from what I hear, you know. Detectives don't like me and stuff like that. But I'm going to show them. I am. I'm going to show them that I can do right, and I'm becoming an engineer. That's my goal. And I'm doing good right now, and I'm going to keep it up if I can.
Carlos, how do you feel about the fighting? What does it make you feel like when you wake up in the morning and you've got bruises all over your face, cuts, scratches, and everything? What do you think of yourself in the morning?
After a while, you get used to it. It's like, because I like to say I don't go looking for trouble, but when it hits me, I can't back away from it, and that's always been one of my major flaws. But it's like, when I get bruises, I see that, you know, it's because I had to do it. I had to get in a fight, whether I got beat up or not.
Why do you have to get in a fight?
I don't know why it has to start, but if someone comes up to you and sticks their bad breath in your face and starts insulting you, it's like something's definitely gonna happen. And, you know, I just can't walk away from stuff like that.
Why do you have to be involved in the illegal activities, the drugs, the crime, theft?
Can't say. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know.
Do you ever think it's going to come back to haunt you?
You mean like in way off future time?
Yeah, whenever you want to go out and you want to earn a living, you want to take care of your family.
Oh yeah, I mean it already has. Because, you know, people classify you, you know, right offhand. And from there, they think that, you know, you're always going to be a hoodlum. But I don't agree with that. Not at all.
You think there's light at the end of the tunnel?
I hope so. Otherwise, I'm just wasting my time.
Do you like the reputation that you have?
No, I don't. I don't like being well known. Now that seems like nobody used to know me, but now everybody in town knows me. You know, you say Alry, and yeah, I know him. He did this, he did that, and there's a lot of people scared of me because of that. You know, a lot of kids and stuff. I don't like that. I just, you know, want to let them know that not to be afraid of me and don't get in gangs and stuff, and so you don't get a name like that, like me. So I do have a name.
I don't like the word deserve, but it's what I deserve because I earned it. I took the hard way into things. I've always tried to be different. You know, you could say rebellious. Got a bad reputation, but that's only because I brought it upon myself. And you just learn the hard way, some more than others.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining me, and appreciate you coming down, and I wish you the best of luck.
Here.
Okay, and I want you guys to shake hands. Okay. It isn't easy to understand why young people join gangs and why gangs do what it is that they do. To help shed some light on this issue, we've asked Felipe Peralta to join us. He's with the NMSU Social Work Department and has had years of experience working with gangs. Now, you told me that you've spent a lot of time in El Paso, and so you've seen this evolve.
Yes, I started as early as in the late 60s working with the El Paso Juvenile Delinquency Project. So I've had on and off experience of working with young people in gang-related activities for over 20 years.
So over the years, have you been able to come up with an answer to why people join gangs?
There are a number of very important factors that need to be considered, I mean, as to why young people will join gangs. One of them is perhaps the stage in their lives, you know, which many of them will join gangs, which is really perhaps around the teenage years. And this is when some of them are breaking away from the relationship of the family. So they're looking for some other identification. Now, in many cases, there's a lot of young people that will go into acceptable kinds of activities that will give them some identification. In many cases, especially as we were talking about perhaps low-income communities, this may not be the case. And the only thing that is readily available to them is the gang activities. And this is why some of the kids will join gangs. It's, in many cases, is the lack of choices of activities. And it's what's there, so they have to be part of it.
Okay, so you don't necessarily believe that the gang problem is a problem of lower income groups, minorities?
Well, I think you can see much more clearly the problem, but I can see also gangs in some other groups, you know, even that most of us don't even think about. Even the young people that play for the football team, they're usually referred as the jocks in school. Then you have the druggies, those kids that perhaps are experimenting with drugs, the cowboys, you know, another group. So it just depends on what group you belong to. And I think especially as we look at in this area, the Hispanic or Chicano young person that dresses like a cholo, for the most part, he stands out from the rest of the people. So those people are easily identified.
Okay. Okay, does our, since we are close to the border, does that have any impact?
Well, definitely. I think it has to do especially with the economics and especially the very high number of low-income communities that exist in this area. And in some cases, for people in those communities, the only identification is really their turf or their barrio, which they have to protect. And this is one of the roles of the barrio. One of the roles of the gangs, that you join gangs sort of to protect your turf, which becomes very territorial among other groups.
But why protect it in such a violent way? I mean, if someone walks along a street on your turf, is that enough reason for them to?
No, I don't think so. I think in many cases there's some people who may not identify other gang members. Mm-hmm. I think when we get into trouble, and it's especially as it was referred earlier, when we get into the bulletin board of the community, which is really the graffiti that takes place, and when people start writing names and somebody scratch them out, this is when some of the problem starts. I think also one of the major problems that exist among gang members is the fact that a girl from that neighborhood is going out with another person from another neighborhood. Now that creates problems. But I don't think it's a matter of just recognizing somebody from outside the neighborhood that you want to do something bad to him. I think in many cases you have to also understand that there has been a history of families, of neighborhoods, where some people have been involved against another family. So in those cases, it will take a little incident that might initiate perhaps some problems.
Okay, a lot of these young people, do you think that they learn these the emotions, they have the strong hatred towards other gangs? Is that something that evolves from years and years and years?
You know, from the people that I've seen, I don't think they really hate the other gangs. It's just a matter of loving their own people that are close to them much more than the other people. And they will go out of their ways, they will do just about anything to protect those people that they have identified. In many cases, when you talk about gangs have actually replaced their families. And again, I think you will talk to the average person, he will do anything to protect his family. So when you're talking about gang members protecting each other, it is because they're protecting their own family in a sense.
Now, is that one of the reasons why it is so hard for a gang member to break away from his gang, because it's like leaving his family?
Leaving his family, leaving his identity, leaving the protection. Also, if you leave the gang and you're out there by yourself and people recognize you that in other times you have been in fights with that gang, then you're in a lot of trouble. So there's even some very practical situations where you need to be a member of a gang.
Okay. Let's get on the subject of generation, second and third generation gang members. We've got men in their 40s, maybe 50s,
yes,
that are involved in this. Why? Someone at that age, it would seem like they would have more responsibilities, or they would direct their energies towards something else. Can you explain?
Well, I think some of them are responsible in other aspects of their life. Some of them hold jobs, have their own families, but still, in many of them, their main identification in life has been as a member of a certain gang. So this is very important. His friendship, his relationships are all they all center around the membership to the gang, and this is passed on to the other generation. And right now in El Paso, we're already talking about perhaps third generation of gang members.
Okay, and you see that happening in Las Cruces as well?
I think, to be very honest with you, I don't know that much about the situation here in Las Cruces, but I think we're talking about very young, newly organized gangs, okay, that usually center around the neighborhood.
Okay, so the neighborhood is very important to these people.
Oh, definitely, that's their identification. And in a sense, in many of the gang members, you see this attitude of, it is us against them, everybody else.
Where does that attitude come from?
Well, the fact that, again, there may be their parents do not have a respectable job, that some of these young people do not belong to perhaps an organized sport activity. So what else is there to do? I mean, what else do they have as an identity other than their own neighborhood and the friends that they hang around with?
Okay, very quickly, what is it that the community can do to help make these people feel like accepted, and so they don't feel like they need to act in this manner?
Well, it's not that easy. Again, if we're talking about a third generation gang members, it's not that easy to break away. But what we need to do is to get back at the community level. I think we need to empower the people in the community. I do believe that in some instances, police intervention is very good. But in most cases, this again creates and reinforces the issue that it is them against us. And I think what you need to do is to begin to provide activities that will bring pride in the community, that will begin to, even though they may still belong to a gang, if you can get them into productive activities, I think even while belonging into a gang, I think you have made some progress.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for joining us, Felipe. You've enlightened us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Learning about the gang problem here is certainly an eye-opener. What may also come as a surprise is the number of people who are working to find solutions.
When we come back, we'll talk to some people who say the writing may not be on the wall.
If you want to know what someone with HIV infection might look like, look in a mirror and ask yourself if you're at risk.
I mean, you see these kids walking around and sitting on the streets all night long with nothing to do. They sit there, they get high, they get stoned, they get drunk. It makes no difference to them.
It's fun. I don't know, I think it's fun. It's like you get to kick back with them. Like you always have a friend. You know, if anything ever happens, you can always depend on them or something.
It's not all bad news. True, the local gang problem is getting worse, but local police are optimistic it's a situation that can be controlled.
And the police aren't the only ones. There are others who aren't waiting around for answers, and you don't need to look far to find those people. Some of them work in the schools, others with the police. Some are gang members themselves who are working hard to change their lives. They stand tall and show little fear, Gang members appear as if nothing and no one can stand in their way. For the outsider looking in, gang involvement makes little or no sense. Just what is it that bonds gang members together, and why is it so difficult to break that bond? Well, so many of these young people are from broken homes. They don't have strong family backgrounds, but being part of a gang can fill that void. Violence and criminal behavior are supported, even encouraged. Sadly enough, it may be the only encouragement they get. Once they're initiated into the gang, they're then part of a close-knit family. And once a gang member makes a name for himself on the street, the gang serves as a wall of protection. And a gang member standing alone is vulnerable, an open target for his enemies. Two reasons why it's so hard to break away from a gang. And leaving can have irreversible consequences.
You could get killed by your own members. It's like there's always an initiation, but there's no ex-initiation. You can better your life, though. You can't just walk away from your turf and say, forget it, it never happened.
Carlos says he has no plans of leaving his gang, but one of these days, Carlos says he'll grow out of it.
I can't get out, so I'm affiliated with the higher gang, and you can always better your life. And, I have people coming up to me every other day asking me, well, don't you regret it? Yeah, I regret it, but I'm not ashamed of it, because I feel that, I can say that, maybe when I grow out of it, if I do, I can look back and say, yeah, I went through it. I might have had to learn the hard way, but I experienced it.
Meet Victor Munoz. Victor spent a great deal of his life involved with gangs. It was only recently that he decided to move on. Victor's decision was made in part by his parole officer. You see, at 21 years old, Victor has already spent 2 years of his life in a Roswell prison. He was released about 2 months ago. Being locked up for 2 years gave Victor time to think about his future and the future of his 2 children.
I have 2 kids to support and to look after. So right now, I say it's changed pretty much since I've gotten out about 2 months ago. I was with my friends all the time. It should be. If I was never in the gang, I probably would never got into trouble.
But Victor paints a different picture than Carlos on what it's like to break ties with the gang.
I know they'd understand and everything, so, because, they're really good friends. So I just let them know that if they was going to get out, it's going to be it between us, and, yeah, we'll still be friends, but...
Victor's mother says life has changed since he returned from prison. She hopes Victor's decision will somehow rub off on her 2 other sons, who are members of the same gang.
Yo los vi mucho en problemas.
They had a lot of problems. I tried to talk to them and give them advice. I felt really bad because they had friends I didn't like. But it was a learning experience for my 2 younger sons when Victor was in prison, because now they think differently. I'm already seeing the changes in my sons. They stopped hanging around with the friends I didn't like. They just went away. They have other friends now, not the ones that were coming around before.
But is a gang relationship one that carries on even after the decision to walk away? At least one person, someone who was heavily involved with gangs at one time, says the gang relationship is everlasting.
A lot of people say that, we're not in gangs no more. We don't get involved with it no more. I call that bluff, because once you're in for the rest of your life. I call it bluff of your homeboys not saying that you're not going to be involved in it no more, because you're involved with your homeboys. Your homeboys are your brothers, you see. And if something happens to your brother, then you're going to be there right with them.
Only the future knows what's in store for people like Carlos and Victor, but they both say they wouldn't encourage others, especially young children, to make their same mistakes. Gary, what I found so interesting talking to these young people is that they seem to have a genuine interest in breaking away from their gang and moving on, but for some reason or another, they couldn't make that step.
It's a struggle.
It really is.
It's hard, but there is some hope. Some of them do make it. There are some solutions, but the question is, what are they? There are lots of answers to that question, and to give us some help in that area, we've invited Rosalie Gallegos of Las Cruces High School She works with gang members there. Also joining us is one of her former students, a former gang member, Felix Villa, who's been through her program. And finally, Manuel Duran. He takes another approach to the gang problem. He belongs to the Guardian Angels of El Paso, and that's a group of volunteers that patrol the streets. And they'd like to set up a chapter here in Las Cruces. But first, Rosalie, yours is a success story in a way, or at least a partial success story. You've had some success in turning gang members around. How does your program work over at Las Cruces High?
Well, for one thing, we don't start off with working with the kids to get them out of the gangs, because like you understood before, there's a commitment of family unity. And what we try and do is try and work with the kids to try and get a different kind of frame of mind. All of the kids are pretty much in agreement that they're tired of the violence and they don't want to get stabbed and they don't want to see their sisters raped. So what we're trying to do is deal with the conflicts that are occurring in our schools. And before the actual violence begins, we try and work with the 2 students involved, or 3 students, or how many students are involved in some kind of a conflict. We try and work with them and in the process teach them some problem-solving skills where they could be able to solve their problems verbally before the
Do you also give these young people things to do?
Yeah, that's something that we implemented this last semester, and it was very successful. As they said, you know, you want to have the kids are identified. They want to be identified as something special. And if we can give them positive ways of being able to express their identity, then it does work out. And what we did is we met with a few of the members, the different gang members that we did have at our schools, and identified the main leaders of our school, and talked to them, worked with them, and came up, and from that we formed from 8 to 40, and now we're working with about 154 students. Not all are gang members, but they're girlfriends of gang members, or friends of gang members, and just concerned people. They're not all Hispanics. The majority are. And what we did is we came up with some activities that they would enjoy doing and they wanted to do. And it was very successful. We had a car show. We had a drama, which took a lot of commitment from the students to meet after school and on weekends, and they were willing to give up their weekends and after schools to be able to perform. And we also had a dance, and we hired 4 policemen to be there, and they sat around and did nothing. The kids pretty much took care of themselves.
So they just need something basically to fill their time.
Yeah.
Well, when you make the initial contact with these gang members, one would think they would be rather timid. Do they trust you? How do you gain their trust? How do they find you?
Well, usually I end up in the office because there's a fight or something going on, and so I'll end up in the office, and Mr. No has allowed me to be able to get into what is the conflict, rather than, okay, you 2 are fighting, automatic 10-day suspension. He's allowed us to be able to find out what is the problem. If we suspend a kid, which Felix will talk more about suspensions and what he went through, but when you suspend a kid, you're not solving the problem. All you're doing is postponing it until he comes back, or putting it back in the streets, and eventually it comes back to the school.
Well, let's go ahead and bring Felix into it. Why did you approach this program in the first place? What made you decide that you needed to do that?
Well, before I got into the gang problem, I had been in a class already, and that was because of my dad dying. I had gotten into a program, and then afterwards I got into a gang, and then I just it was like every other weekend, week, I would go, and then I'd get suspended, and I would come back, and then I'd still go, and I'd find the same person or the same gang, and then me and my friends would go over there, and we'd tell them, well, and we started again, and we'd get suspended again, and it just kept going until she got into this program. She got me into it, and then I just I started growing out of it, and I just told my friends that I didn't want to be part of the gang anymore.
Did that cause any problems for you? Did they give you a hard time for wanting to move on?
Well, not really. At first when they were going to initiate me out, I told them, if you guys were my friends, you guys would just let me go. And they said, well, they just laughed, But I just, I wanted to get out, so I just, went through. There was about 6 of them, and they initiated me out. But ever since then, I'll see them, and then I'll tell them, you know, what's going on and this and that, and they'll still talk to me like, you know, close friends.
Do you feel as though you're out for good now?
Yeah.
And do you credit this program for that?
Yes.
What was right about this program for you? What worked?
It brought more people together. The gang that I mostly had conflict with, I found out, you know, that they could be really nice, you know, so I started, you know, hanging around with them, mostly than hanging around my gang. So, and then, you know, some of the, you know, like my friends from another gang, they got out of their gang, and then it just like people were getting out of gangs and the problems at schools just stopped.
Where does the conflict start?
I think it starts with the third party. That usually what we've seen at Cruces is the two people that actually get into the fight, that actually throw down, usually don't even have a conflict, or it's a misunderstanding that started from somebody else coming and saying, this guy wants to kick your ass, this guy and that's what it starts like. Pretty soon you get 4 or 5 guys behind this one guy, 4 or 5 guys behind this guy from different gangs, and they end up finding a place to meet, or it happens right there at school. But what we found is that we had 3 different, and I won't say the names of the gangs, we had 3 basic different gangs, and we had those 3 gangs working together, talking to each other, bringing them in the office and said, well, you told so-and-so that, no, I never said that. You didn't? Well, so-and-so, and that's basically what it is. And it's the stare downs, that's part of you know, they call it mad dogging, and that's part of the beginning of a fight, and being able to get these kids to come up, instead of mad dogging and coming up and say, look, I've got a real concern with you, you know, this is, and teaching the kids that that's not kissing somebody's butt, that's actually, you know, communicating, and just teaching them a different way of thinking. And it has been successful. Felix has gotten real close with one of the other gang members, and they're real close. Now the other gang member that he no longer has a conflict with, they're not spending a lot of time together, but they at least talk to each other,
So
and they acknowledge each other.
So you hope this has a domino effect on...
Well, it has. It has had a domino effect at our school, because we're finding, I mean, we saw the other kids are watching Felix and this other member walking together. Their initial thought is they're walking because they're going to go throw down. And then they get confused of whose friends are whose, and pretty soon you've got these 2 gangs walking together.
Well, let's switch gears for a moment, because I'd like to bring Manuel in on this. You confront gangs out on the streets of El Paso, and does this ring any bells, this discussion for you?
Somewhat it does. When we run into gangs out there, of course, they're always out there to confront somebody. When we're out there to protect people, basically. We let them understand that we're not out there to harass them. If they're out there to have a good time and not bother anybody, that's fine. We all want to get together with our friends. We make them understand that we're out there to protect other people. People are being hurt, raped, mugged, or robbed. And they seem to understand that. They understand the point where other people are trying to help, you know, and they're there just to hang out.
What is really the purpose of the Guardian Angels? Is it to go out and keep our cities safe, or is there more to it?
It has a twofold purpose. We're out there to be, of course, visual deterrents to crime, to hopefully prevent crime just by being seen out there on the streets. The second is a role model to the young or to other youth. We're out there to hopefully give them the same kind of flamboyance that a gang gives them, but to put their energies into a positive way, put them towards helping the community, helping their brothers or sisters, putting a role model for them. We also go to many schools and talk to kids against drugs, of course, to get them away from drugs and steer them clear of all that negative influence.
How do the police react to your efforts?
Locally, in the Las Cruces and the El Paso area, they've been very receptive to us. We've gone in initially and explained it to them, smooth the waters out, basically, and explain what our program is about. We're not out there to do their job. We're not out there to cause more trouble. We're out there to help where we can. We're there to fill those holes that are not being presently filled right now. We're out there for the youth. We're out there for the community who's out there, who has to work late at night, who has to be out there in the streets when the most of the criminal element is out there in the street.
When you are out on the streets, you confront gang members, I take it. And what happens when you come across some gang, or they're involved in some activity that's criminal?
We're not out there to confront gangs. We go through a lot of gang territories, but like I said, we basically made peace with them because they know we're not out there, we're not their opposite gang, we're not their enemy gang to confront them. We're out there to hopefully keep all neighborhoods safe and peaceful.
You see this as part of the solution?
Definitely. We have a lot of ex-gang members in our organization who saw to it that we're doing basically a good job. We're out there to prevent all kinds of crime. They see us as an alternative, as a positive alternative to express our energies in a positive way.
And you'd like to bring this to Las Cruces?
Most definitely. We need the support of the community, of course, and give the kids an alternative to gangs.
Well, Rosalie, let's turn back to you. You're one person. We haven't met many people like you working with gangs. Is it enough? Can we really make a dent in the problem?
I initiated this program, but since then I've received a lot of support from teachers in Las Cruces High School, and from Detective Franco and Victor. We all did the drama thing together, including a lot of the kids from the school, and Mr. No, and Jesse Gonzalez, because Jesse allowed Mr. No to allow me to, gave us the flexibility to be able to come up with some different programs and some options with these kids. So I may have initiated it, but that's it. We've got a lot of support from our school and dedicated people that really want to make some changes.
You know, something that I noticed when I was over at Oñate High School talking to some gang members, and what impressed me was that the teachers put themselves on the same level with these students. They don't look down on them. Is that the key to getting to a young person, is not saying, no, you shouldn't do this, why do you have to do this? But say, hey, let's work this out. Let's talk about it. Is that?
I don't know if teachers and students are at a different level to begin with, so I don't know, but we all were kids at one time, and we've all had identity problems at one time when we were kids, and that's part of puberty and growing up, and I think just listening and trying to understand where they're coming from, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where we have to be from to be able to relate to these kids.
Well, we're out of time. Rosalie Gallegos, Felix Villa, formerly from Las Cruces High, Manuel Duran. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.